Okay, so the call looked like it was coming from his bank's phone number. The caller knew a lot of his account information already. All sounded legitimate, yet within minutes, thousands of dollars were gone. This week, we are exposing a bank scam that is just exploding across the country right now, and how it even got one of our own here on the team at CBS News Philadelphia. How one call cost him $7,000. I'm your host, Josh Sidorowicz, and this is the In Your Corner podcast. I mean, when we talk about this being an issue, this is a huge issue. Some of the latest data that we have from the Federal Trade Commission says that Americans are losing billions of dollars, upwards of $3.5 billion to these so-called imposter scams. Just last year alone, it is actually the most reported type of scam now to the FTC. They are impersonating banks. They're impersonating these trusted organizations or government entities to get people to kind of let their guard down, right? And they're doing it too by using a lot of the personal information on you that you may not even realize is already floating around out there. And we're going to get into more of that in just a moment. But I think the scariest part is that you've got victims here who often believe in bank imposter scams that they are protecting their money, that they're actually saving themselves and getting out of harm's way when in fact they are handing it over directly to the scammers. And if you're sitting there thinking, as I know many do, and admittedly even at one point I used to be this way, like I could never fall for that, right? Well, that's what a lot of victims think. I think there's the latest survey out from a Gallup poll maybe 1 or 2 years ago found that now we're up to at least 1 in 10 Americans say that they or someone in their house have been scammed, like within the past year. So I feel like it's not a matter of if for a lot of us, but when, unless you have the awareness about what to look out for. And to kind of show that they can target anybody here, that anybody can be impacted by this. It actually happened to one of our own colleagues here at CBS News Philadelphia. Here's a report I just filed this week here on In Your Corner. Watch this.
I log into my PNC account, my heart drops.
Even a CBS News Philadelphia anchor who knows about consumer scams can fall victim.
Obviously, I watch your segments. I'm aware of this sort of stuff, and it's the last thing that was on my mind that day.
Siafa Lewis said he got a call from what he thought was his bank's fraud department. What are they saying to you?
He tells me that he's calling from PNC Bank and that there has been suspicious activity. He wanted to confirm if it was me or not. A call that I have received legitimately from PNC in the past.
He says he didn't suspect anything, and he never gave them any sensitive information, or so he thought at the time.
I think they had my username and my password, but they couldn't get into my account. Thus the phone call, thus the, can you confirm the 6-digit code we just sent you?
A lot of times, investigators say that scammers probably already have a lot of your info. In this case, what they needed was that one-time 2-factor authentication code sent to his phone.
And you gave the code?
Yes.
Imposter scams like this one, where a scammer pretends to be a business or agency you trust, are now the most frequently reported scams in the U.S., according to the FTC, costing victims more than $3 billion last year alone. PNC says it will never call and ask you for a one-time passcode or your login information. The American Bankers Association says that's standard for all banks. And you should always hang up and call back using the number from your official bank statement or on the back of your card. In Siafa's case, scammers moved $7,000 out of his account using Zelle. His biggest lesson, he says, never trust the number that's calling you.
If you are to receive a call back the number that you know you have to that institution.
Okay, so there you go. Siafa Lewis, anchor here at CBS News Philadelphia. So he got a call, appeared to come from PNC's fraud department. Caller claimed suspicious activity on the account. Caller already seemed to know a lot of his information, which made him sound credible. And then the scammers needed that one final piece of the puzzle, a 2-factor authentication code. And as you saw, Siafa shared it, right? And then the criminals used Zelle, which we'll also get into more on this in a moment too. They used Zelle to then transfer $7,000 out of his account. But I mean, here's the important point here. This scam was not like about trying to steal his password. They already had that information. It was about the manipulation here of the victim into helping essentially these criminals bypass the extra security layers that we put in place to try to stop this here. Another common sort of way that we've seen this particular type of scheme play out is the scammers will tell you that you need to move your money in order to protect your money, that your account has been compromised. They'll maybe even suggest that it's been like an inside job, that there's a bank employee who is stealing your money. And it starts much in the same way where you get that call. They already have a good deal of your information. They know the balances and the details of your account, which can feel really gross after the fact, no doubt. And then they say, again, your money's at risk, and they need you to move your funds to like a more secure account. And just talking about our colleague here at CBS News Philadelphia, this particular scheme recently happened to one of our colleagues at the network level at CBS News, and he shared, luckily he didn't fall for it, but he shared some of his experience on social media. Listen to this clip.
I got sucked into a bank impersonation scam. Basically, somebody called knowing a tremendous amount of really personal information about me, sounded authentic. I had my ex-wife on the phone. We were talking together. This person sounded legit, and they sounded like they were trying to help. I went pretty far down that road. I spent probably over an hour of my life, maybe even more, talking to this person, trying to figure out exactly what they were trying to get us to do. They will be smooth. They will be calm. They try to ratchet up the urgency toward the end, saying this is how to protect your money.
Okay, so Matt Gutman there from CBS News. So let's talk about why this is so effective, because I think that there are three main reasons why this works as well as it does, or almost works as well as it does, maybe in Matt's case. You've got the caller ID spoofing, which is something that we've been talking about for years now. This ability for the scammers to take, familiar numbers that we trust and display it as if that's the number that's actually calling you. So the scammer can very easily make it look like it's coming from a legitimate bank or institution. Then you've got the personal information that they already know, right? So how are they getting that information? Think about how often you're watching the news, you're scrolling on social media, and you hear about a data breach. I was just talking to our executive producer here this morning, and I said, you know what, at this point, I expect that all of my information is floating around out there in some way, shape, or form because of data breaches. And what scammers are doing is they're just trying to kind of grab it all and piece it all together in a way that makes sense, in a way that where they just need one more missing piece to the puzzle. So they've got probably more information on you than you care to think about or that you'd realize, namely because of data breaches. You've also got then, when you have those data breaches on the dark web, they can buy and sell this information on the cheap. And then, you think about it, it's kind of old school, but there's also information that can be recovered from actual physical documents. So that's why, it's always important to like shred your paperwork. Don't just like throw away your credit card statement in the trash without tearing it up first. I've seen reports where there are scammers that are literally going dumpster diving. So all of that is kind of how they're getting that personal information. And then finally, and this is probably the biggest one, is the fear. So we know when we're afraid, we're not the most rational, as we should be. And then scammers, they create this urgency, this panic. In this case, it's a great example, right? Your money is at risk. No one wants to hear that their money is at risk, that their life savings, that whatever could potentially, be taken away from them. And so that's what they use. That's what they hone in on to get you to act without thinking until you realize, before it's too, until it's too late, probably, what they're doing. So, I think that the scammer's greatest weapon here isn't technology, it's fear. It's fear, and that's what gets you to act. And that fear then is supercharged because they know so much about you. And then when it, God forbid it does happen to you, I think unfortunately a lot of consumers assume that if and when they're tricked, the bank is going to automatically reimburse you. Problem is, unfortunately, at the end of the day, banks are often asking one key question that could make all of the difference here. And that is, did someone steal the money from your account, or did you actually technically authorize that transaction, even if you were deceived into doing it? I think it's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people because banks do make that distinction between fraud, which is someone accessing your account without your permission or your knowledge, or a scam where you are manipulated into authorizing an action. And, victims, in a lot of cases, they are personally moving that money. They are personally allowing access to their accounts, even if they believe what they're doing is securing their money. In reality, it's being controlled by the scammers. And because you are initiating all of these actions, recovering those funds then becomes a lot more difficult. Banks also just frankly have limited ability to recover funds and transfers after they're completed because they can very quickly be transferred into other accounts. They can be converted into cryptocurrency, sent overseas. A lot of times these are done through wire transfers, and wire transfers feel to me like this very old school way of moving money, because it's like you move it, poof, gone. You can't track it. You can't get it back. And the problem too is these scammers can be so quick about it too that even if there was a way maybe to trace it, the money gets moved so quickly out of these scammered control accounts to something else, even far beyond, that it becomes almost impossible. And so I understand the frustration for, customers. Again, that people assume that everything can be reversed, only to discover it's actually quite the opposite. What we see, if banks can reverse it, they can reverse unauthorized charges if it's like something, again, that you didn't get permission to, or if your card was stolen and was used to buy something. But it becomes far more complicated when the transaction itself appeared legitimate when it occurred, right? So think about that. If the transaction itself looked legitimate at the time it occurred, because technically you were the one who did it, that's what the bank is looking at. Unfortunately, that's what they have to go on. What I think is interesting, going back to when we shared Siafa's case at the top of the episode here. So I'm hopeful, and he is too, investigators might have a little bit more to go on, because the scammers allegedly accessed his account and then initiated moving that money by way of a Zelle transfer, not like a typical wire transfer. And so there may be a bit more information for investigators to go on there, maybe a bit more information for investigators to kind of follow the trail for money there. But Siafa is still trying to get his money back in that case. So knowing all of this, okay, awareness is key, but then what can you actually do to protect yourself? I would say there are 4 or 5 kind of key things that I would keep in mind just as you move forward in your daily life. One, and this goes across the board, no matter what the situation is, do not ever share a one-time passcode. Certainly not if someone is calling you to ask for it. But when the text comes in and it says, "Here's your one-time passcode," do not share this. Your bank or anyone legitimate will never ask you for this. That is true. Even though Siafa thought it was his bank asking for that code, PNC itself and the American Bankers Association says, no, the bank, they will not ask you for that code, even if they're the one that's generating it and sending it to you. This one, even though Siafa didn't do it, and as we just talked, they might already have this information, but don't ever share any kind of personal login or credential information over the phone. If you get a call, hang up, or better yet, don't answer it. And if they leave a voicemail because it's important enough, if it is important enough, you can call them back. But I think the best practice, and Siafa alluded to this as well, call them back directly using a number that belongs to the bank. So whether it's the number on the back of your debit or credit card, it's the number that's on the top of your bank statement, use that number. And don't trust, though, that if they're calling and that's the number that shows up on the caller ID, that's them calling you, because like we said, they can spoof it, right? So your best line of defense is to hang up and you call them back. If it was a legitimate call, they'll know what you're talking about. If it wasn't, then there's your answer. And that goes then to the next point, is never trust caller ID. I think at this point it's kind of useless, considering what we know that scammers can do with it. And then time is not on your side. So you've got to report as soon as you realize that something's wrong. Siafa immediately called his bank. He filed a police report with his local police department, and he even contacted the FBI too. I think people maybe underestimate or overlook that option. I've met with officials at the FBI here in our local Philadelphia office a few times, and they will tell you maybe they won't be able to act on your case specifically or act in time to get your money back, but every report kind of helps to build the larger puzzle, right? They can't track this stuff. They can't even begin to figure out where to find these criminals unless people are reporting it. And the reality is that even still today, most scams go underreported. I mentioned that $3.5 billion in losses in 2025 that the FTC said. That is believed to be likely an under estimate of true losses. And again, that goes back to because officials believe that most people are not reporting those scams. So I think there's something to be said about not just assuming that, oh, this was a one off, or oh, it's not enough to warrant it, or oh, I'm not going to get it back, so why bother? No, always report it and do it as quickly as possible. And also reporting it, there's a lot of shame and embarrassment around being scammed. No one wants to be a victim of a scammer, but reporting it, talking about it, I gave kudos to Siafa for even being willing to go on TV and show that it happened to him, that it happened to a news anchor who maybe someone would look at that and go, you should know better. But that's the reality. And so I think that the more that you can talk about it, the more that we can show that it does impact, it could impact everybody. There's a stereotype that maybe it is only older people, less tech savvy people. I think time and again we see that is not always the case. So look, whether it is a CBS Philadelphia anchor losing $7,000 to people who we've reported on who have lost tens, hundreds of thousands, their entire retirement or life savings, these scams prove that intelligence does not protect you from manipulation. Awareness is going to protect you from these types of things. And so we're going to put those links down in the bio of this video as well, but worth repeating to report this, whether it's to the FBI, which is ic3.gov. It's a really easy website to remember, or the FTC. The FTC also has a website where you can go and report fraud as well. But awareness, reporting, keeping your eyes open, and just being suspicious. I know it's probably not like the greatest thing in the world that you have to operate with like a level of suspicion at all times, but that's the world we're living in now. And so the more that you're thinking about this, the more that you are just kind of a little cynical and doubtful from the onset, I think the better off you will be in the end. So I'm Josh Sidorowicz. This has been an episode of the In Your Corner podcast from CBS News Philadelphia. Remember, when it comes to your money, hang up first, verify next.